Welcome back. This was a video I wanted to make for a while. With the recently announced Sonic Generations plus Sonic plus Shadow, I really, really got in the mood of Sonic again. Sonic the Hedgehog is one of those franchises where you love it or you hate it. And of course, I'm in the love category. And considering how great this game looks so far, and considering that Sonic Frontiers finally got its final bit of DLC, I think it's about time that we did a little retrospective of the series, just like with Skylanders. Only, I'm gonna do it a little differently. You see, with the Skylanders games, I just listed them out and talked about what I liked and disliked. I'm gonna do that here, but this time, I'm also gonna rank them. Any rules? Only one. Mainline series games only. No spin offs, with one exception. So, with that being said, as Nathaniel Bandy would say, let's get ranked. At the very bottom of the list, we have the spin off that I was talking to you about, Sonic Boom. Oh man, this game is trash. Going into a little history, this was the first ever Sonic game to use the Cryware engine. However, the engine was not made for the Wii U, but Sega forced the game to be on the Wii U. And as if it learned nothing from Sonic 06, Sega rushed the game. Again, Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric is going to be the only spin-off game I'm going to talk about. Now, I'm also going to be counting Shadow the Hedgehog, but I don't personally count that as a spin-off, more as a mainline Sonic game where you play as a different person. So what is wrong with this game? Well, I think it's safer to ask what is right with this game. Now, I'm one of the people who doesn't hate the Sonic Boom idea. Having a side franchise alongside the main one is something that a lot of companies do. And this was a good way to introduce the TV show. But that's the problem. The whole thing is just a tie-in for the TV show that wasn't even out yet. If this was a great game, I think more people would positively react to this whole change, and maybe it could have even been its own spin-off. But no. First off, the game doesn't look that great. Now, the animations are great, but just looking at this footage, the animations are like the only good things about this game. The stuttering, the glitches. You could tell that this game was not made for this console. It was actually supposed to be made for the Xbox, but no, it got forced onto the Wii U. And oh boy, it really shows. But that's not even to get into the whole character debacle. Now, I'm actually of the opinion that Sonic Boom's characterization of the characters, while not being my favorite, since it was supposed to be a spin-off, I'm okay with that. But this game is just not good. It's just... Also, some of the humor is just a little off. I love the humor in Sonic Boom, but in this first outing, it's just off. The whole thing. I also never really liked the redesigns of Sonic Boom. So yeah, Sonic Boom ranks near the bottom. But I should be the first to say that this really isn't Big Red Button's fault. This is Sega's fault for forcing them onto not only a console that they were not comfortable with, or that the engine was even able to run on, but also for rushing them so they couldn't figure out how to do so. Yeah, it's a little upsetting that Sonic Boom had to fail, but not as upsetting as another game coming up. But before... Next up, we have Shadow the Hedgehog. released in 2005. Shadow the Hedgehog was a very weird game. I mean, it's technically a spin-off, but its whole thing relies on the main canon. It's trying to be an adult game, but it holds back in many areas. It tries to continue a plotline from the original Sonic Adventure 2, but it just doesn't. It just repeats Sonic Adventure 2, just a little bit weirder. I just find the whole thing to be a little strange. It's cartoony, it's adult, it's edgy, and Sonic is not the main playable character. This was the very first game that the 4Kids actors ever starred in, outside of Sonic X. And admittedly, they didn't have the best showing. However, Jason Griffith as Shadow is my definitive Shadow. Yes, Jason Griffith is my definitive Shadow. From Shadow the Hedgehog, you may not get that impression. But trust me, in a game that's coming up next, and you probably already know which one it is, trust me, you will get that impression. But Shadow the Hedgehog is basically just Sonic with guns. That's kind of it. But it also tries to shove in a whole bunch of other things, like multiple story angles, but your choices don't really matter. The firing mechanics, but they're slippery. Also, you can homing attack, so why do you need a gun? The chaos mechanics, but they're tied to the morality mechanics, which never made any sense to me. And, well, this is one of the few Sonic games where the characters swear. Now, granted, Sonic's a slightly edgier franchise, so swearing in these games is not out of the question. But it feels forced here. Like, you can't go 1 second without everybody saying the D word. It is above Sonic Boom, however, because it does play a little better, and it does feel like a Sonic game. Also, the opening cutscene is fantastic, no matter how edgy it tries to be. And the story really is the worst part of the game, as it makes absolutely no sense. People are still trying to piece it together to this day. But Shadow the Hedgehog 2005 is still one of the worst Sonic games of all time. Not the absolute worst, but it is one of them. So yeah, edgy Sonic doesn't really rank very high. Next one shows that it could, but it just didn't. Next up is everyone's favorite punching bag, Sonic 06. Sonic 06 is the most infamous of all the Sonic games. The 2010s could not escape from this game. Everything about it just felt so wrong. And so not like Sonic. And when you play the game, yeah, you can really see it. Glitches are abundant, the story is messy, and worst of all, Sonic. Sonic is the worst part of Sonic 06. His whole story feels so unnecessary. Seriously, if this was just a game about Shadow and Silver, then I think it would be okay. The story would at least be better. But Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 plays the worst out of all the Sonic games. And it looks really bad too. Aside from this opening cutscene, which just looks amazing. Seriously, Blur Studios knocked it out of the park with these cinematics. Why are we not having these anymore? But when you go in-game, it looks dreadful. Sonic is a jerk throughout the entire game and only cares about Elise. And weirdly enough, it's the only game where he's written like this. Also, this Eggman design, no. No. Get that away from me. That's not Eggman. I don't know who you are, but get it away from me. But, despite everything I said, there is a good game in here. Yeah, the way it is right now, it's awful. But as Project 06 has proven, if it was just given a little more time, if Sega just gave this game more time to cook in the oven, then Sonic 06 would probably be one of the best Sonic games ever in existence. This game was supposed to be the big reboot of the franchise, hence why its official name is just Sonic the Hedgehog. But it failed so miserably that we're still feeling the effects of it to this day. But that's not to say that this game is terrible. Silver is written beautifully here. Shadow is the best he's ever been. And probably ever will be. I love the way that Shadow and Silver are written in this game. And this is sadly one of Silver's only major appearances. But Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic 06 is just a bad game as it is. The sad part is, it could have been great, but Sega rushed it out the door before it was ready. And that's just really sad to me. But with games like Project 06, we get to see what could have been. I recommend watching Jay's reviews on this game to see how this game is actually a good game, just with a very bad foundation. Next up on the chopping block is Sonic Lost World. This is a game I really go back and forth on. It's not terrible like the previous games, but it's not really good either. It just kind of exists. Sonic Lost World is in a strange part where the characters were written terribly, but the gameplay was still decent. I do like this game, but I also hate it at the same time. Sonic Lost World is just a game that seems so confused in my opinion. It is just not very good. But it's also not very bad either. I just realized I didn't talk about the story or the gameplay. Well, the story, there's not much there. Tails acts like a grump when Eggman is forced to team up with them. That's it. That's it. Also, the Lost Hex is mentioned, but it's a big deal, but it's really not. It's really not. The whole existence of the Lost Hex is never brought into question again. It just happens. And the Deadly Six, everybody knows they're really bland villains. At least until the IDW comics actually gave them some defining personalities and gave us reasons as to why we should consider them Class A villains. But their debut was just trash. But the gameplay is fine. Like, it's not the worst game ever. Playing it won't kill you. But this is like the opposite foundation of Sonic 06. A really good game just has a terrible story. AKA a good game, aka a bad game, put on a really good foundation. Also, this is the only time where Sonic has a run button, which, yeah, feels off. Let's just move on. This is gonna be a really hot take, but next up is the original Sonic the Hedgehog from 1991. Yep, I can already see the pitchforks coming from a mile away, because every one of you has just put together that means I like this less than Sonic Forces. Now, hold your horses. Objectively, yes, this is a much better game than Forces, because you actually have to do things. But, yeah. First off, I love the sense of speed for half the levels. For half the levels, it's really good. Green Hill Zone keeps coming back for a reason. Starlight Zone, I don't see why it never comes back. And Spring Yard Zone, okay, it's the outlier, but still, Marble Zone deserves more love at least. But looking back at this game, it's kind of obvious to tell why Sega only wants to bring back Green Hill Zone from this game. Because none of the other zones are really worth bringing back. Starlight Zone is the closest thing we've got to a really good one, but it's full of cheap moments. Scrap Brain Zone's literally throwing everything at you, even though I think that would be a really good final level. And we don't even get started on Labyrinth Zone. Okay? We don't. It should also be noted that Sonic 4 will not be counted on this list, but if it was, it would be very near the bottom. Below this game, that's for sure. But why is this game so low, if I'm saying that it's a good game for half its runtime? Well, that's the problem. It's only good half the time. Plus, all the modern combinations we have now, like the boost and heck, even the spin dash, were not things in this game. Now, am I saying this is a bad game? No. But personal preference speaking, I don't like it as much as I like the next few games. Yes, this does mean that I like Sonic Forces a little bit more. And no, I'm not off my medications. That's just my opinion. But feel free to tell me why I'm wrong in the comments below. But let me ask you one question. Why do you think that Green Hill is the only zone from Sonic 1 that keeps getting brought back? Up next is Sonic Forces. This is the most frustrating game in the entire franchise. Now, in terms of difficulty, no, that's easy. Not in terms of presentation. No, it looks amazing. No, I mean in terms of story and gameplay. And not because it's bad. No, in fact, I find it really fun. But in terms of, it could have been way better. What we have is good, but all the potential of being 20 times better was right there. And yet they didn't take it. And that frustrates me to no end. I only put this above the original because it's a little more fun for me. But trust me, every part of my being is telling me put this below the original. It does not deserve any praise. And that part of me has a point, because this is just a reuse of assets. The Phantom Ruby from Mania is back, and they had all the rights to expand its lore, but they chose not to. Actually, this game is very inconsequential to the entire story of Sonic, despite being hyped up as the game where Eggman wins. In fact, concepts of this game shows that this game was going to be a lot darker and edgier. But instead, we got jokes like Green Hills looking a lot more like Sand Hill right now. Please laugh. You see? But if the gameplay is good, then I can excuse it. And the gameplay is good. But then it's over. You see? I didn't even finish my entire speech, and whoever's playing this footage already finished the first level. That is really something right there. This may win the title of the shortest boost game in the entire series. The shortest. And I'd say, out of all the boost games, it's the worst. If you're going to pick up an easy Sonic game, then go ahead. But try to not make it this one. It's going to taint your opinion on Sonic. Also, can we just talk about what a head-destroyingly wasted opportunity Infinite was? Like, seriously, Infinite can summon anyone he wants on his side, and he's been shown to be just as fast, if not faster than Sonic, and nobody likes him. And that's because he's used well for the first half of the game, but then he's just promptly forgotten about until the final boss fight, and then he's literally killed off. So Ian Flynn can't even rescue this character because they killed him off in his debut game. Canonically, at least. It's not shown on screen, but according to lore, he's dead. Infinite cannot come back. And that is so frustrating. Infinite has all the potential to be one of the greatest Sonic villains of all time, and not only did they squander it, but they actively decided to not do anything with him afterwards. Look, I am not one for retcons in a Sonic game, but just this once, I want that bit of lore where Infinite dies to be retconned. I just want Infinite to come back so that they can make him an actually good character and not whatever he is right now. Also, the levels are just way too short. Did I mention that already? Good. Also, what's Classic Sonic doing there? Okay, this is starting to become a rant of forces. But if you want me to do that, I might one day. But for now, just note that Forces frustrates me to no end. I just don't like this game anymore. And I just want it all to end. We are now officially in the good territory. But on the weaker end of the spectrum, we got a slightly controversial opinion: Sonic Heroes. Heroes is a good game, it's just a little overly ambitious. Playing as 12 characters and 3 characters at once. It's just 12 characters total, 3 characters at once. It is strange. Now, I love the characterization of all the characters, and, well, it's just. And the animation is so charming, but the gameplay is very, very wonky. I also love how it's just trying to be what it's trying to be. Not some edgy story or grand, amazing, beautiful tale. It's just supposed to be a fun little filler game. And it does that really well. Also, it has one of the best twists in Sonic history, with Metal Sonic being the main villain. That was a twist that nobody in the 2000s saw coming. But this game is kind of weighed down quite a bit, oddly enough, by its main gimmick. because you have some explaining to do about why this game plays you as three people, but you're actually playing as one person. It's a little confusing, but honestly, I like Heroes. It's trying to be a cute little game, and I can't fault it on that. Okay, I'll admit, I wasn't sure if I was going to count this one originally, but it's Sonic Superstars. Sonic Superstars is not a bad game, but it is comparatively weak when you compare it to what it came before. Superstars is okay. I mean, I love how it gives Amy a lot of focus. I especially love Trip, and I love how they give new powers to the Chaos Emeralds. But it's just a really clunky game. There's not a lot to say on Superstars, honestly, as much as I would like to talk about it. I also really like how Fang is finally given more spotlight in a. I love how Fang is finally put into a main game, is what I'm trying to say. Such obscure characters finally getting spotlight. It's amazing. Also, Trip is the cutest bean ever, and you can't tell me otherwise. Next up is Sonic CD. Okay, this is where the games really start to get good, and my opinions are slightly more agreeable. From this list, you can probably assume what the next games are, but you may be surprised of the order. But Sonic CD is definitely a game that said, let's take the original and make it good. And yeah, unlike Sonic the Hedgehog 1, where only half the stages were good, all the stages in CD are good. This was also the first game to introduce Amy Rose, who at the time was just named Rosie the Rascal, and Metal Sonic, both characters being all-time favorites of the Sonic community. Although Amy had to go through a phase where everyone hated her for some reason. Not judging. But still, Sonic CD was definitely proof that the Sonic team was definitely improving their craft. This game introduced a lot of things, like the Time Stones, which weirdly enough never appeared in a game after this. No, I don't count Origins, because that's just a remake of all the old games. Now, there is one more thing that I really love about Sonic CD, and that's something that I don't hear a lot of people talk about. The implied character development for Sonic himself. Sonic starts off the game absolutely hating Amy, kicking her off of him whenever she tries to go in for a hug, and was about to do the same in Spring Yard when then all of a sudden Metal Sonic came in and kidnapped her. Being the kind soul he is, he goes after him. Eventually, he finds Amy and just lets her hug him. Now, this is not implying that Sonic and Amy love each other, but it is implying some character growth within Sonic, showing that Sonic goes from hating Amy to accepting her, and eventually becoming her friend in the later games. I like this. I don't see many people talking about this character development for Sonic. Sonic's transition from cool kid to cool kid, but he can also be your therapist, was a gradual one, built up over the Genesis games. And yeah, no one talks about it. And that's really weird to me. Now, is there any problems with Sonic CD? Of course. Main one being the troll springs, like that one right there. Look at that. But another one being, if this is your first time playing, where are you going exactly? You cannot tell. Also, your main objective is very confusing. Sonic CD is very confusing, and its objectives are just straight up nonsensical. But Aside from that, everything that this game does introduce is really cool. I especially like the super peel out, which rarely appears again after this. I get it, the spin dash is better, but the super peel out's still good. All in all, Sonic the Hedgehog 2000, Sonic the Hedgehog CD is definitely a game that I like. It's a more in the middle game, mainly due to all the troll springs. Seriously, whose idea was this? Yuji Naka, I am looking in your direction. But yeah, Sonic CD is known as a classic, and I'd say it earns its spot. Alright, next up is Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the first game to star Tails, aka the Pest Boy. Yeah, my three favorite Sonic characters are Shadow, Eggman, and Tails. If Sonic CD was basically taking the original game and making it good, then Sonic 2 was basically taking that game and improving even further. Sonic 2 is considered the best game by many people. And even though I personally don't agree with that, I can see why they say that. Sonic 1 was a beloved game, but it had many issues. Sonic 2 takes those issues, throws them out the window, and adds in so many new things that would become series staples that it's actually hard to believe that some of these things weren't in the original, like the spin dash and the 8 Chaos Emeralds. And the 7th Chaos Emerald, I mean. That's right. In the first game, there were only 6, which meant no Supersonic. Supersonic was introduced in this game. Special zones that were actually good were introduced in this game. Tails was introduced in this game. And most importantly, the Spin Dash was introduced in this game. Basically, everything good was introduced in this game. And just like the previous one, all the stages, except for one, are really good. Wing Fortress was a great final level. Death Egg is notorious in all the right ways. Hilltop is just a banger. And it's all great. So, what's the problem with this game? Why is it not ranked at the top? Or at least near the top? Well, two reasons. One, I just like all the other games better. But two, Metropolis Zone. It's the outlier. Metropolis Zone is probably one of the worst final stages in the entire series. Also, is it just me or is it too easy to get all the Chaos Emeralds? I mean, I struggle a little bit, but most people can get the Chaos Emeralds lickety split. I thought these things were supposed to be hard to get. Still, though, it introduced Tails, and it introduced Supersonic, so I really can't complain. Sonic 2 has a great Sonic 2 has a great reputation, and I'd say it earns that reputation. It is definitely one of the greatest Sonic games of all time. Huh. I guess the old saying is true. If at first you don't succeed, just try again. We're heading back to 3D now because our next game is Sonic Unleashed. I'll be honest, the opinion on this game has changed so much that I'm not even sure what it is anymore. People hated it, now people love it. It's weird. But personally, I think it's really good. The story was the last game to really go hard until Frontiers. The gameplay was amazing. It got Tails, it fumbled on Tails a little bit, but honestly, I could forgive that. It was just for one scene. So, also this cutscene just looks fantastic. Like, seriously, I wish this was a movie. I wish we got an entire movie in this style. But that's beside the point. The point is, this game is solely carried by gameplay. The Werehog stages make you feel invincible. Like, all these creatures of evil monstrosities are coming at you, and you're just plowing through them. And the daytime stages, oh man, you're just going through all these beautiful locations, blasting through at Mach 5. This is definitely the game that got Sonic's speed correct. And I don't think anybody can doubt that part. Even the biggest Werehog haters admit that the daytime stages are great. Mainly because it got the sense of speed so right, without it being too overbearing. Shoutouts to the Wii version, by the way. Yes, this game's Wii version is actually slightly different. And I played that version too. It's pretty good, but it won't be ranked. But yeah, Sonic Unleashed is just fantastic. But it's not my personal favorite Sonic game. Heck, it's not even my favorite 3D Sonic game. It should be noted my biases right away. I actually prefer the 3D Sonic games over the 2D ones. But that's not to say that the 2D ones are bad. Far from it, in fact. They're actually really good, and I can recognize that. In fact, next up is Sonic Mania. To think that Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces were released around the same time is baffling, considering the gulf in quality. Sonic Mania is basically trying to be what Sonic 4 was. Except there's a huge difference in how it happened. Because Sonic Mania actually succeeded. Why is that? Well, let me just say this. Everything is exactly how you remember it, not exactly how it was. And that is to this game's benefit. You see, it doesn't try to emulate what worked before. It does what works before, but instead of purely just emulating it, it does its own thing, which I love. Mania is probably the best looking of all of the Genesis-like games. Arguably, it's probably even the best looking Sonic game. Although, that has some really stiff competition. Mania is just really good. Does it have problems? Yeah. The final level is a bit weird. The bosses aren't good. But other than that, no, Mania really doesn't have a lot of problems. Mania is as close to a perfect Sonic game as you can get. The story is simple yet comprehensive. Ray and Mighty were added in a patch, and it was actually really fun to play as those guys again. This game is basically Sonic Generations, except you only play as Classic Sonic. Now, granted, that does sound pretty bad, but trust me, it's not. It's a really good game, and anybody who's played it will attest to that fact. That this game is just perfect. So why is it below the other games? Well, the answer is simple. I just like them better. But that's not to say that Sonic Mania is bad. To say that it is would just be outright wrong. Because, like I said, it's as close to perfect as Sonic has got. I don't really have anything to say against it. It's just a great Sonic game. It takes what worked and runs with it. Pun fully intended. I love it. The special stages are also some of the best in the entire series. Fight me. I'm sorry, but the half pipe has gotten old. Next up, we have probably the most experimental Sonic game on this list. And to some people, probably the best Sonic game on this list, but my biases are real. That's Sonic Adventure, the original. Sonic Adventure was many things back in the day. It was the first mainline Sonic game to go fully 3D. And oh man, it was good. Basically, Sonic Adventure was trying everything in its power to take the whole Sonic formula that worked in the past and make it 3D. And it did a really good job. The opening song, Open Your Heart, is still remembered to this day. This game is just a classic. But what really gets people talking are the multiple playable characters. Sonic, hot take over here, is probably the best playable character, but that makes sense. He is the main character. My guess was that this was just an experiment to see if they could get away with multiple playable characters. They played it safe the first time around and made Sonic the main one. But we also got Amy, Knuckles, Big, Gamma, a new character, and Tails. It was just a great game. Now, why do I rank it here? Well, obviously, Sonic Adventure 2 trumps it. But another reason why is because not all the characters were created equal. I find Knuckles' gameplay to be slightly frustrating. Tails is sort of just a copy of Sonic, except he can fly. And I don't think I need to discuss why Big is bad. I really don't think I do. But I think the biggest problem, the visuals of this game aged like milk. Seriously, Sonic's mouth animations look so wrong. But yeah, other than the animations, it's a good game. This was one of the last games made for the Dreamcast, before Sega became a third-party developer. The other being Sonic Adventure 2. Man, just look at that animation. It's just gross. But yeah. Basically, this game set the groundwork for what all future 3D Sonic games were going to be like going forward. And for that, I am next up on the list, we have Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I'm counting them together because they were meant to be played together. And I guess what they say really is true. Third time really is the charm. Sonic 3. Take everything I said about Sonic 2, take every single praise that I've given it, and ramp it up to 11. This game, in terms of presentation, is the best Genesis game visually. But is it the best gameplay-wise? Do I even need to say it? Of course it is. This is my favorite Sonic Genesis game. And spoiler alert, is the last 2D Sonic game to be mentioned here. Why did I put it above Mania? Well, it's true that this game has lower lows than Mania, but it also has higher highs. This game just does everything right. This is a true worthy successor to Sonic 2. I mean, any game with the burden of being the successor to Sonic 2 is definitely going to struggle a bit, but Sonic 3 pulled through in the end. And Sonic 3 and Knuckles, playing it the way it was intended to be, even if it's on Origins, which will not be counted, again, because, again, it's just a compilation of all the games. But even playing it on Origins, it's clear to see why this is a fan favorite game. This was also the first time that Tails and Knuckles got super forms, which I'm surprised they barely do anything with. I'm just glad that Super Knuckles was acknowledged again. But the big one, Hypersonic, which I'm really surprised never made another appearance. It's kind of sad, but at the same time, I get it. They don't want to outshine Supersonic. That being said, I wouldn't say no to Sonic going hyper again. I'm just saying, Sega. I'm just saying. So, yeah, this game is just great. I also love that this is basically the first game to have a full-fledged story. It's still simple because it's a Genesis game, but I love how it's told entirely without text. Also, this was the first game to introduce Knuckles, and do I need to say the impact that Knuckles had on the entire series? Yeah, I didn't think so. Knuckles is just that great. Knuckles is just a great character. I love his arc. And while it's a little more obvious than Sonic's, I just can't get over how well it was done without dialogue. The whole thing just works. The whole game just works. The whole game is fantastic. I'm surprised it took this long for it to get a remaster. This long for Sega to finally acknowledge this game's existence. But hey, I'm glad they finally did in the end. Next up is every Sonic fan's favorite game, Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic Adventure 2 is probably the game that everybody points to being the best of Sonic's work. And I'm not going to say they're wrong. It's just not my favorite. This is number 4 on the list, by the way, and I just realized there's only 4 left. Sonic Adventure 2 is just a lovely game. First off, this was one of the final games released on the Dreamcast. And yeah, it's kind of sad that such an amazing piece of hardware had to go out. But man, if it had to go out on any game, I'm glad it was this one. Sonic Adventure 2 definitely deserves all the praise it gets. Just looking at this game, it is a step up from Sonic Adventure 1. Just like how Sonic 2 was a huge step up from Sonic 1, Sonic Adventure 2 is a huge step up from Sonic Adventure 1. The thing is, though, Sonic Adventure 1 was actually a really good game. So, if you step up an already really great game, well, then you get one of the best games that people still talk about. The story was taken even more seriously this time. It introduced fan-favorite characters like the President, Rouge, Gerald Robotnik, Maria Robotnik, and, oh yeah, everyone's favorite, Shadow. Oh, that's not me being mocking, by the way. Shadow is my favorite too. Shadow's whole arc is just perfect in this game. Shadow basically is Sonic, but edgy, but he goes through a grand arc. He starts off as the edgy guy who wants to destroy everything, but then we find out why. Because he made a promise to do so to a human girl who he watched die right in front of him. And then we feel sympathetic. And then Shadow learns that he may be wrong about what his friend said. Maria, by the way. And then he goes out of his way to protect the Earth and sacrifices himself at the end. Man, I'm so glad they brought Shadow back in future games, but if they didn't, that would have been a perfect way for him to go out. I'm just saying, we probably ruined a great story, but oh well. At least Shadow got more time than they... At least we got 06 Shadow, and I'm glad for that. So, how does this game play? When you're not listening, it's basically just Sonic Adventure 1, but better. Sonic Adventure 2 basically takes everything that worked and just kept it, whilst getting rid of everything that didn't work. I really love this. And I can definitely see why people wanted to see a Sonic Adventure 3 after this one. They kept the three best game modes and split them between two stories. I love it. The only parts I don't like are actually Knuckles and Rouge's missions. I never really liked the treasure hunting missions that much. But the mech and speed sections, oh man, you better believe I'm playing those on repeat. Also, City Escape. Do I need to say any more? It's City Escape. The final level is a bit wonky, but after you get past that, it is basically a true Sonic game. And, oh man, I can see why everybody says this is their favorite, but it's not mine. And that, my dear viewer, is going to be revealed. Next up is a personal favorite of mine, a game from my childhood, Sonic Colors. Sonic Colors was definitely an omen for what was to come. And I think that's why people hate it. The simplified story, the lack of major supporting characters, the jokes. But I think what a lot of people forget is that there was a good game in there. A really good one. After the blast of a lot of experimentation, and after the lukewarm reception of the Werehog, it was clear that we needed a break. And Sonic Colors was that break. If you view it as that, it's actually really good. Sonic Colors proves that sometimes less is more, but let's get some obvious gripes out of the way. First off, basically the levels are too short, and there's hardly any story. Okay, now we can get to the good stuff. What, you thought I had more complaints? No, I just really like this game. It's a short and simple game that you can complete in a couple of hours. But you know what? It doesn't try to be anything else. Unlike the other games where they try to have a grandiose story but fail spectacularly, this game just tries to be exactly what it is. A short game meant to hold Sonic fans over. It's not trying to be anything stupid. It's just trying to be a good game. Sonic Colors is a very simple game. Boost level. Every level is a boost level, except now you have wisps. Little aliens that give you superpowers. That's all it needed. Sometimes less is more. Sonic Colors is just a fun game. But it's not my favorite simply because there's not much else to it. And like I said, you can beat it in just a couple hours. One afternoon, and you're done. That is if you're not going for 100%. But if you're not, this game is over in like 3 hours at most. I can definitely see why this was the game to get a remaster for the Switch. But, as we all know, that didn't end well. In fact, hot take here, but I think Sonic Colors Ultimate, if we were counting it, would actually be at the very bottom of the list. Even lower than Sonic Boom. And that's simply because at least Sonic Boom had passion behind it. Sonic Colors Ultimate did not. But hey, at least the original was made with passion, and that's all we can ask for. On to number 2. Well, we're here. The scariest number in any rankings list. If you've been paying attention, you'll know there's only 2 games left. Frontiers and Generations. Everything I said up to now may have been a little confusing, But these two games are definitely things that you may be wondering where I'm placing. So, are you ready? Did I really go with that one? Number two, you'll never guess what number two is. You wouldn't guess because there is no number two. Number one is both of them, Sonic Generations and Sonic Frontiers. Wait, what? Sonic Generations deserves to be the best game in the series because it just gets the gameplay of Sonic so right. Everything about this game feels so good. But that's not even it. Sonic Generations just is a love letter to the franchise. Unlike even unlike every other game that tries to call it back, this one does it in the perfect way, taking everything from the past and remixing it so it's just how you remember, but it's even better than it was. There's a reason why Sonic Generations is often considered the best boost game, and why I think it's one of the best games. Sonic Generations was a game that I was unfortunately not able to play until now, because fortunately for us, it's getting a remaster. I'm just crossing my fingers hoping it's better than Colors. But Sonic Generations is basically the perfect blend of the classic Sonic style and the modern Sonic style. Classic Sonic is perfect for those who want a classic experience. Modern Sonic is perfect for those who want a modern Sonic experience. And if you're crazy like me, you get to have both. It's a 2-for-1 deal, and as we all know, those are the best deals. Do I have any complaints? One. I have one complaint. The story. There basically isn't any story. And it is pretty cringy what is there. But other than that, this game is perfect. It's basically everything I could have asked for a Sonic anniversary game. You see, Sonic Forces? This is how you do it. Pay homage to what worked in the past without solely relying on it. I love Sonic Generations. And there's a good reason why everyone else does too. It is the best Sonic game. Or rather, one of the best. There is only one other game that could possibly even try to top it. Sonic Frontiers deserves to be the best Sonic game of all time because of all of its heart, passion, soul, story, basically everything. The story of Sonic Frontiers is probably some of the best we have ever gotten. Character wise, this game is perfect. Story wise, this game is perfect. It only really introduces one new character, Sage. But man, did they do a good job. I just love the way Sonic Frontiers does everything. The gameplay is really good. Combat in a Sonic game that feels just as good as it looks. It's basically everything I could have wanted from a Sonic game. Now, does it have problems? Of course it does. Every Sonic game does. But I love it regardless. Okay, let's get one thing out of the way. The cyberspace stages suck. Okay, now that we're done with that, Sonic Frontiers just does everything right. The story is fun. The gameplay is perfect. Okay, not perfect, but it's still great. And everything about it harkens back to the Sonic days of yore. It's basically Sonic 06, except it's a good game. I love it. Also, Roger Craig Smith as Sonic is just perfect in this game. Sonic is basically written perfectly here. I wouldn't want it any other way. Sonic Frontiers was a game that I was looking forward to for the longest time. And oh man, it lived up to the hype. Sonic Frontiers was a game that I didn't even look at any reviews before I played it, just so I could form an accurate opinion. But the thing that surprised me the most about Sonic Frontiers was the fact that all of its DLC was free. Free DLC! That's unheard of these days. And yet, here it is. Frontiers went against the grain of modern gaming. It tried to be a good story and game, first and foremost, and a good moneymaker second. Sonic Frontiers feels like all the passion from Sonic 06 was returned, and it's back full force. I love Frontiers. It is the perfect Sonic game for me. So that was my ranking. Personally, putting Generations and Frontiers at the exact same spot was a little bit of a controversial move, even more so than all my other stuff. But I just can't choose between them. One of them plays perfectly but has a terrible story. The other one has a really weird gameplay loop but has the best story. I can't decide which one I like more. Maybe the remaster will change my opinion. And right now, I'm leaning more towards Generations, but Frontiers still deserves to be the best, as along with Generations. They share this spot. I love it. Please let me know what you think your favorite is. And why is it Sonic Adventure 2? I just know that it's going to be the most popular answer. Anyway, I've been the Gamer Nerd, and to quote Sonic himself, nothing starts until you take action. If you've got a problem, then run.